Welcome everyone. One more person. It's wonderful to see familiar faces and other guests who are joining us. My name is Em, and on behalf of the MFA program, and Alice Lee and Molly Sherman, who are the co-coordinators, wanted to welcome you to tonight's um, lecture in the MFA lecture series. It's my great pleasure to introduce tonight's guest designer, Elaine Lopez, who is joining us by Zoom from Philadelphia to share a talk entitled Making to Transgress, Risograph Printing as the Practice of Freedom. As you can probably intuit from the title that she chose, Elaine's work as a designer, researcher, artist, and educator challenges oppression, what bell hooks called the white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. And her work powerfully champions design practices that uphold diversity, inclusion, and racial equity. We're really excited to welcome her today in the context of Design Seminar, where we have been covering topics including design justice, design as care, and other anti-oppressive design practices that align so well with Elaine's own work and interests. In the vein of design justice, I want to just acknowledge that as we join on Zoom from different points around North America, that we are on Indigenous lands. I am situated in Austin at the moment, where the Tonkawa lived, and this was also the ancestral lands of the Comanche and Apache. In acknowledging this, it's a moment for us to reflect on how we can support Indigenous-led sovereignty and land back movements. I will drop some links in the chat, both to Elaine's website and also to the native land map, so we can all situate ourselves in terms of the Indigenous lands we are sitting on at this moment. I'm thrilled that people could join us from near and from far, and that Elaine has made time to join us today to share her work with us. We will have time for questions at the end of her talk, but we also want to encourage people to use the chat space actively to respond. She will be able to see it as she is going and sharing with us. You can feel free to turn off cameras while she's sharing her slides, because we'll have the view setting for the recording so that we see Elaine and her presentation. But then at the end of her talk during the Q&A, I welcome everyone to turn on your cameras if you're comfortable, to make Elaine feel welcome. And with that, one more note is that for those who are in the MFA program, we're really delighted that we'll be able to invite Elaine in person to Texas in May for the MFA residency. And it will be great to actually be together in person. So with that, I want to give a warm welcome to Elaine, ask everybody to please put a Zoom emoji up to welcome her, and to turn the screen over to you. Thank you for being here with us tonight, Elaine.
Thank you. Thanks for a great introduction. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here. Let me see. I'm assuming you can see my slides, right? So, if, like Em said, if you have any questions or you want to interrupt, feel free. This is going to be a casual presentation. And I'm going to talk about, I feel like the name is already a bit of a misnomer. It is about risograph printing and more, because I wanted to make sure to cover off on your questions. So apologies in advance for my meandering a little bit. All right, so let me get started. I move things around on my screen. Okay, so I'm like I said, I'm Elaine Lopez. I'm based in Philadelphia, which is Lenape land. And I'm an independent designer and assistant professor of communication design in the undergraduate and graduate departments at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. So I live in Philadelphia and I commute to Brooklyn, which is pretty common in the East Coast. You can just hop on a train and be in another couple of other states in a short amount of time. My work sets the conditions for communication around culture and identity. And I do this by creating immersive graphic design experiences that challenge people to expand their worldview. This image that we're looking at here is my thesis book that maybe some of you might be familiar with. I was told we did some readings from here. And I want to start off by sharing this exhibition of my book. So you've seen my work in book form, but actually it existed in an exhibition format for a very short period of time. And so I dug up some photos of that installation process. And I don't know if y'all will be doing installations as well, but this was sort of the process of that. We each had, our class had about 14 people, and we each had to install our work overnight, present it, and then deinstall it the following morning. So this is what it looked like before we started. And here's sort of a map of where everyone decided that they would go. It's a bit of a chaotic day, as you can imagine. And I think, you know, exhibiting graphic design is a bit of a challenge sometimes because it's not usually meant to be exhibited on walls. So, you know, I was looking for some inspiration on how to best show my work. And I came across this website, which I highly recommend. I'll put it in the chat so you can bookmark it if you are interested in exhibition design. But it's called, this website is called Reading Forms, and it's all about just different ways to display graphic design. And I was particularly interested by this exhibition at the Shenkar College of Engineering and Design in Israel, and particularly how they used these boards as sort of a physical grid. And so keeping that idea in mind, I got some boards myself, which I assumed would be easy to install, and they were not. So I drilled these 2x4s onto the space that I had designated for my work and used those as sort of mini shelves and also kind of a grid, right, to help me display the work that I had. I didn't really map this out ahead of time. I just put the 2x4s on the wall and then hung things up there as I had them. I had everything on the floor and just started putting things up. I had never really seen my work together in this way, and doing so revealed many connections between projects. So I highly recommend that you pull out all of your work and look at it together. You might notice some patterns here. You know, I noticed my use of photography and also of certain colors. It was also the same day that I received these signs that are part of a project. I had them, you know, sent out to print, and I received them back. They're actually corrugated plastic, and they're also kind of hilarious. So it was, you know, I just opened this box. I had these signs and put them up, and they tend to elicit the best responses in people. Like this, for example. This was, you know, a few days later when I was putting them around town, and as soon as I put this sign down, people started interacting with it. But I'll talk about this project in more detail later. So this is what I mean by meandering. Back to the exhibition, I tried to make use of everything that I had worked on during my 2 years as a graduate student. So there's sort of all sorts of projects on the wall. I didn't realize how colorful my work was until I did this. And here's kind of what it all looked like together. Then I had to present this work, and for some reason I went last. I guess I just like chose the last spot, and this gave me a lot of time to really think about what I wanted to say that day. At this moment, I felt really frustrated with the lack of representation in graduate school and design in general. Additionally, all the roadblocks that occur during the experience of grad school. And I use this moment to sort of give a manifesto or just sort of like air some of those grievances. And, you know, I didn't really go through each of my projects, but I kind of just, in a way, my work talks in a whole about these issues. So this is an image of me presenting, and it went well. It was very stressful to put up and take down, but that's sort of the story behind that image on my website of this exhibition. So back to the signs I mentioned earlier, this project is called Signs of the Times 2018. And like I said, those pieces are corrugated plastic, about 18 by 24 inches. This project was inspired by my upbringing. So I grew up in Miami looking at these signs. If anyone else is from Miami, or I've been told a lot of other places look like this. So I think it's kind of like a suburban strip mall culture. You know, most strip malls around the country have this type of signage. And what's interesting is that they don't really subscribe to the rules of typography that we study in school, but they do get the message across to their intended audience. And to me, that communicates authenticity. So, oh yeah, at the time, this was 2018. So I decided to go to grad school sort of as a result of the Trump election and just sort of all of the turmoil that was experienced at that time. And I felt like I needed a change. And so I had made a pretty dramatic shift in my life. And I was curious about other folks, if they had made any big changes to their lives. And I wanted to capture these changes as people voted in the midterm election of November 7th in 2018. And in order to retain the personal and informal nature of these conversations, I reached out to friends via text and I asked them, question for a project, how has your life changed as a result of the 2016 election? And if so, can you share the first thing that comes to mind? So here is a conversation I had with my friend. I then took these responses and printed them on these signs, and you know, they were relatable, but they also reflected sort of a left-leaning perspective. And I wanted to share them in a way that would help people who voted for Trump maybe, or who didn't share these views, to be able to empathize with how their choices have affected the people who did not. So by printing these messages using the same materials and language as election campaigns or landscaping businesses or people who buy houses, maybe people would pay attention to what was being said because it was being presented in this sort of unusual but familiar medium. I then put these signs all over Providence, Rhode Island, where I was living at the time. So put this on the side of the highway, you know, kind of where you would see these. Here is that one message that you saw earlier. Go. I've had the opportunity to display these in a couple of different settings. Here they are in an exhibition at the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore. I also purchased the phone number that you see on the signs, and if you call it, although I don't know if it's still active now, I may have deactivated it by now. We'll talk about that later, but if you call it, the voice recording would ask you how your life has changed, so that this project could continue to expand. They've been shown in many contexts. Here is the last time they were shown was actually at Type Force in Chicago just before the pandemic. And that night alone, I received like 10 phone calls during the opening. And, you know, I did receive a couple of messages. I also had some really interesting conversations with strangers who called the number. If I was available at the time they called, I would just have a conversation about why they called this sign, and sort of what their experience has been. And as I was thinking about presenting this project today, I thought about how many things have happened since I performed this experiment, and even question, you know, is this project still relevant? So to me it is, because it sort of represents a snapshot of a moment in time and how we were feeling. But now through the lens of today, so many different things have changed. And so I actually recreated this experiment this afternoon on Instagram in regards to the news of the student loan payment extension. And I received the following responses. I'm not sure what to do with these, but I wanted to do this to show that this project is more about, you know, asking people questions that relate to current events and how we share those responses back out as a way to better understand each other. So I shared these back anonymously, and some folks said, you know, this extension hasn't really affected much. They're still paying, but at least with no interest. Others have said they've forgotten about them completely and are in denial that they will ever return. If you want to participate, you can also, yeah, I saw that and put my Instagram on the chat. You can answer these and maybe they'll be part of the next iteration of this project. This was the extension of that that previous response. Some folks, said they're better able to catch up on the rest of their debt. And my friend said she felt lighter and happier. I feel like I can relate to this. It's been one of those things that personally, as someone who recently went to graduate school and has a ton of student loan debt, it really kind of has had a big impact on my life. And all of you as students, I'm sure, have thoughts and feelings about this. So feel free to participate. I'm thinking maybe a good extension of this project would be to create postcards. I think similar to the first project, it's one thing to gather all this information, but then to think about how to share it back out in a way that is interesting and that can help communicate something is sort of the bigger challenge. So I'm open to any ideas. If y'all have thoughts, we can figure out a way to share these sentiments in a way that might, hopefully have at least some policy change, or at the very least change somebody's mind about the impacts of these decisions. So that's that project. And now back to Riso printing as initially promised with the title of this talk. So I consider Riso printing to be an immersive graphic design experience that is rewarding, forgiving, and generous. These inherent qualities of the Riso are in direct contrast with the anxiety, frustration, and steep learning curve that can be experienced while learning graphic design today. One of my favorite parts of teaching Riso is hearing the squeals and the oohs and the ahs and other expressions of joy that people experience the first time they make a print. This was my first Riso print, and I cried a little bit when I came out of the machine because I couldn't believe how easy it was to produce something so tangible, so bright, so real. This is an image of one of the Babson boulders that I had taken on my phone during a hike somewhere in Massachusetts. So I had this photo on my phone and I was able to turn it into this print and later into this series of prints that has all these rocks. If you haven't, well, not very many people know about these boulders, but they're actually huge, right? They're like bigger than life size. And it's very strange to be on a hike and all of a sudden run into a rock that says like work or something. I wanted to return these to paper so that people can sort of appreciate the shape and the message behind these rocks. The Riso allowed me to add a materiality to my work that I really couldn't achieve through like laser or inkjet printing. The colors are vivid and each print is sort of uniquely imperfect. And unlike most digital mediums, you actually have multiple physical objects that can be shared, sold, traded, and distributed to the public. I quickly became obsessed with Riso printing and wanted to share my newfound passion with students. So I taught a Riso course, a Riso workshop at RISD the following semester with the help of my fantastic teaching assistant, Vivian Wang. She taught me how to like properly use the Riso and introduced me to the warm and friendly community that exists around the world. And I'll share some more resources around that. Hopefully when I come by in May, I can turn you all into Riso fanatics as well. After graduating from RISD in 2019, I became an AICAD fellow at the Maryland Institute College of Art. And that's just a teaching fellowship to help diversify faculty at art and design institutions. So I had the opportunity during this time to evolve the workshop into an entire semester course called Making to Transgress, Risograph Printing as a Practice of Freedom. That relates to the name of this talk. And this title was inspired by the late and great Bell Hooks's book, Teaching to Transgress, Education as a Practice of Freedom. So in addition to learning about how to use the Riso, I wanted to further nourish students by creating a space to discuss culture, identity, self-care through the reading and discussion of radical thinkers such as James Baldwin, David Bohm, Victor Papanek, Bell Hooks, etc. This class, I try to create an environment in this class that encourages the exploration of culture by making prints about things that are personal and can help others learn something new about their peers. Here are a few examples of some of the work created in this class over the years. So here we see, some family photos or images from home, or even the recycling of projects from other mediums that found sort of a new life through Riso printing. So for example, Anna Christina on the bottom right had this pattern of these beautiful flowers. I think it was, I don't know if it was like a placemat or a fabric that she had collected, and she was able to sort of give that a new life by Riso printing it. And in the middle there, Stephanie Wu kind of created a guide of Boston's Chinatown by taking an image from Google Maps and sort of overlaying her favorite spots on top of that with like handwriting, and then Riso printed that into a postcard. So here are just a few examples. I was teaching this course when COVID forced us to go fully remote and had to quickly pivot this very physical course into an online one. And this is where the readings really came in handy. For the 6 weeks that we were remote, students created visual responses to the readings using whatever they had at their disposal. So collages, drawing, text. Here are some examples of that work by Valerie Lamb. And then we took those graphics and produced the first edition of this book with the help of Resolve, which is a Riso printing studio in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, not far from me right now. With this project, it was born of necessity in that the semester ended so abruptly, and I wanted people to have physical copies of their work, so we created this publication. But also, I believe it's important to publish work, especially student work, and distribute it out into the world. I think this helps to build confidence and show that the things you make can have value to others. And so while this was born of necessity, it became this thing that I've repeated that I'm currently working on now. And so on the inside, you see how pairing people's visual responses next to each other made for some really interesting juxtapositions. And we printed, enough to give a few copies to each student, and then sold the rest via Etsy, and also through independent bookstores like Drawdown Books, Inga in Chicago, and even Banana Fish Books in China. And then we used the profits from the sales of this book to provide free Riso printing to the next class the following fall. At this moment, we had no idea what the fall would look like. I'm actually really glad we did that, because the next course was fully online from beginning to end, so we never even met in person. And as you can imagine, teaching Riso fully online was quite challenging, and it basically required me printing everything and mailing it sort of all over the world where people were located. Towards the end of the semester, we collectively designed these 4 zines together via Zoom. Everything was decided together as a class, so the colors, the format, the typefaces, the layouts, and so we produced the series. Here it is animating, so you can kind of see all the different covers. And similar to the previous edition, everyone responded visually with whatever they had access to. So Ben Becker was actually in the illustration program, and he created this portrait of James Baldwin. Other folks it was a mix of undergrad, graduate, graphic design majors, non-majors, and everybody again responded with what they had accessible to them. Here are 2 works by, one work by Matt Holven and another one by Meredith Zerby. They were graduate students at the time that they were taking this course. And this is typographic exploration by Anna Tobin in response to this reading. I'm currently teaching this course at Pratt with graduate students, and expect to produce volume 3 at the end of this semester, so keep an eye out for that. I think working with such a joyous medium as the Riso, sharing our culture, reflecting on our values, and collaboratively publishing student work feels like one of the few things that makes sense in the world sometimes, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to spread the joy of Riso through this class. And through teaching Riso and just kind of sharing my passion for it. I actually I have a Riso of my own, which is sitting back here. She's a little older than some of the ones available at institutions, but I try to get to that work. And I think this is actually a good segue into client work, right? Because I see Riso printing as somewhat client work, but not really. And one of the questions that you all had is how I choose the clients I want to work with, and how do I balance these projects with other collaborations or self-initiated work. And when I got this question, I realized it sort of makes a couple of assumptions about my practice that I would like to address. And I guess the short answer to this question is money, right? Realistically speaking, I don't feel like I necessarily get to choose clients. People sort of reach out to me, and I usually don't turn anything down because I need to pay the bills, right? And as a result, there's a lot of projects I don't post about, sometimes for confidentiality, but mostly because I don't like to put up work that I don't want to do more of. So, you know, PowerPoint decks and a lot of stuff that is the bread and butter, I think, of a designer's work. I don't necessarily put up on my website, so you won't see that stuff, even though I do it. But I think I only tend to promote the projects that I hope to do more of, right? And I think that's sort of a philosophy that you'll hear a couple of folks talk about. So that's sort of the short answer to that, or maybe the long answer, I don't know. But, you know, sometimes it feels like this because everyone wants everything at once. And other times there's nothing going on. And that's really stressful too, right? If I'm used to sort of expecting certain income. So it's stressful. I think teaching and freelancing and trying to be a designer at the same time is challenging. And I guess I'm sharing this because I feel like the older I get, the more I realize that we're all just trying to keep it together in whatever way we possibly can. And sometimes that appears like other people have it all figured out by the way you interpret their experience, but that may not be accurate. So on that note, I'll share a few projects I work on while freelancing this year. But I will say that a lot of the work I do with Rizo I don't make any money off of. It's usually a friend asking me like, hey, can you print this poster for me? Or can you do this zine? And just out of sheer passion, I do those projects, but they're not necessarily something that I've been able to generate a ton of income on. But I do see that work as important. And so I feel like these freelance projects are the types of projects that make that work possible. So the first project I'll share is the Carry Forward Symposium graphics and website. So this was done in collaboration. I think this is a video. Yeah, okay, so this will be mesmerizing for a little while. So this was done with the Center for Complexity, which is an organization, I don't know exactly what to call it, but it's a group within RISD where I studied, and they take on big problems, right? And they try to connect people together. So they connect scientists and policymakers around difficult topics like the opioid epidemic or nuclear arms. I think those are two of their big ones. And this symposium that they do annually was sort of a way for them to bring people together to share, have discussions around these topics and to sort of share work. And so this is a website that I was charged with designing sort of the identity and the website for this event. I had the website up there. It's carryforward.xyz. I think it's easier. It's really difficult to show a website, I realized, while doing this without just like showing the website. But this is sort of what happens when you scroll down from that image. And here there are links to sort of each of the papers written by the participants, and also live streams that were recorded of these dialogues. And so this website became sort of an archive. There was also a lot of work to sort of promote this event as it was happening and before. So here are some screen grabs from the Instagram page. So we had to design all of these assets. Also, backgrounds for the participants that were on theme. And it's always a delight when people actually use these. So this was like particularly proud moment to see everybody using the backgrounds properly. Oh, see, I know, okay, I meant to put more pages on this. This was, okay. We also, sorry about that. This, like I said, there was also paper. So each of the participants wrote on the topics that they were experts on. And so we also typeset, well, I say we, but like I also typeset all of the papers and put them on this website. So this website is like a publication, and actually an extension of this project will be to create a book that I'm starting at some point. So this has kind of been like a year-long engagement. The symposium itself, although this took place in like a month, so it was really stressful, but it was in the summer, which meant that I wasn't teaching at the time, that I was sort of able to dedicate the time and space for that. And it was really great to work on this project because I feel like it aligns with my values and sort of goals around using design for the greater good, if you will. So that is one project, and sort of an ongoing one that I think, you know, aligns with my values, but is definitely client driven. And then the next project I'll share is one that I actually just kind of finished, and this was an exhibition for a Philadelphia artist, Mark Stockton, who works with illustration. Truth be told, this was one of my favorite projects and sort of the first project that I'd ever received like this to do the graphics for an exhibition. Normally, a lot of my client work was very corporate, especially before going to grad school. And I think grad school sort of introduced me to this new world, a new way of practicing design. So this exhibition also aligns with my values in that Mark Stockton illustrated 100 portraits of different people, right, with keeping representation in mind. And you know, how do you select 100 people? Who are these 100 people? What did they do? Are some of them famous? I mean, some of them are more famous than others, and you kind of see all of these at eye level. And so these are some of the graphics I created. It was really a treat to work with such beautiful illustrations. I mean, that as a designer is half the battle, and it really makes me think about, you know, design. Design is a bit of a game of chance, right? If you get lucky, you get a good project, you know, it's sort of easy to make things look better that already look good versus, you know, projects that start off with very few graphics or any sort of visual things and you sort of have to start from scratch. So here are some of the materials for this exhibition. We created postcards, and all of these lived in, I have some behind me, but in these clear envelopes. So there was a poster, there was postcards, and there was an exhibition catalog. So here are some of the postcards, and all of it was sort of meant to come in and out of this packet in whatever order the user wanted to, you know, pull them out of or put them back in. So all sort of work together as a system. So here are some of the postcards. And then this is, yes, it's working. Okay, and so this is the exhibition catalog that went with this project. So here you can see the exhibition in its space. There was also an essay written about the show and the acknowledgement. So here was kind of a smaller project. And then in addition to the graphics and the exhibition catalog, I also did a website, right? So I feel like with design, everything, you know, it's seldom just one thing anymore. Everything sort of has to translate to all these different mediums. And so I created this website in addition to help sort of promote the project and also to share all of the portraits. So because there's 100 of them, there isn't really one place where they all exist except the website. And so here are some screen grabs of that. That website is, did I put it? Oh yeah, it's just Mark Stockton, 100 people. Oh yeah, okay, it's there. So that's the catalog, and then here are some images of all of the portraits. And then there's a couple of other bits of information. Here's a full list of the portraits in the exhibition, and the exhibition is really interesting because they kind of move around depending on the day, and there's been several lectures that sort of cover off on some of the people featured in this exhibition. So this was sort of a real treat. And it also culminated in these physical posters. So not just print, but also like a digital display. So here's an image of that. I'm realizing I could have added more projects, but I'm happy to move out of formal presentation mode and jump to my website if we want. But that is in a nutshell what I have to share for today. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen.